In the time of the unraveled sky, the world had long since moved on from its golden age of convenience and two-day shipping. The collapse of society hadn't been the result of any one cataclysm. No, humanity was much more creative than that. It had been a slow rot. Rising waters, shrinking economies, a few too many wars fought over oil that no one could afford to refine, and eventually the dreaded algorithmic wars that had left cities dark and streets haunted by the ghosts of supply chains past. But if you asked Dennis, one of the village elders of the crumbling town of Detris, the blame for all of it could be traced back to one man. "Jeff Bezos," Dennis growled, shaking his fist at the rusted sky, a gesture mirrored by most of his neighbors who gathered around the old fountain for warmth. It was October, and that meant only one thing. Prime Day was upon them again. The old-timers said that in the time of the old ones, Prime Day had been a ritual of reckless abundance, a day when people with no real need for extra portable phone chargers or instant pots or whatever would swarm onto the internet to purchase them anyway. The sales were unbelievable. So unbelievable, in fact, that no one quite realized what they'd given up in exchange. Their souls, their privacy, and, ultimately, their world. No one knew exactly when the fall had started. Maybe it was the trillionaire space race, or the final collapse of the USPS. It didn't matter now. All that really mattered was that every October, a strange ritual continued. The skies darkened with swarms of delivery drones buzzing like locusts. They dropped flyers, glittering with offers for deals you can't miss on products no one had seen in decades. Just last year, Dennis had found a flyer offering him an 85% discount on a Roomba. A Roomba. As if anyone had electricity anymore, let alone carpets. The worst part was the scene. The drones didn't just fly by unnoticed. No, they broadcast jingles at full volume. "Get ready for the lowest prices of the year! Prime members get extra savings!" The drones circled overhead, mechanical crows advertising things that no living soul could buy, but reminding them of all that was lost. The warehouse, the source of this torment, still stood as a towering monolith in the wastelands just outside Detris. No one could remember how long it had been since anyone had gone in or out. The old ones had built it, but the old ones were long gone, and the warehouse remained, self-sustaining, self-regulating. It had outlived its creators. Some said it ran on a fusion of solar power and dark, unknowable contracts signed in blood and Wi-Fi. No one had tried to approach it for years, not after the last man to do so had been vaporized by one of the automated security turrets. You also didn't mess with the drones. Ratch had been a mechanic and figured the drones might have some useful tech. He'd managed to capture one in a net, and that had been his undoing. The security drones showed up 15 minutes later, cordoning off the area around Ratch and the drone he was busily trying to untangle with flashing lights. "Do not leave the perimeter. The police have been alerted. Stay where you are." Except there were no police to alert. When Ratch tried to leave, one of the hovering drones zapped him with electricity that left him twitching on the ground for several minutes. A neighbor experienced the same fate when he tried to shoot at the security drones. Not that anyone could hit them. They seemed to sense any approaching projectiles and would jig out of the way right as the shot was fired. The day passed, and Ratch sat there, helpless. Any attempt to escape was thwarted, as was any attempt at rescue. By the second day, he was dehydrated and clearly in a bad state. Even the drones recognized this. "Failing vital signs detected. Stay where you are. Medical personnel have been alerted." There were no medical personnel to alert either. By the third day, Ratch was dead. The combination of dehydration, repeated electrocution, and a hot October day had finished him off. "Expired human detected. The morgue has been notified. Thank you for your patience," the security drones intoned, and then they collected the flashing perimeter markers and the still entangled Prime Day drone and zipped off toward their warehouse. The gathered onlookers had finally been able to approach Ratch's lifeless form and bury him. So he left the warehouse and the drones alone, ignoring them as best as possible. But the warehouse had its schedule, and on Prime Day, it stuck to it like an unholy clock. Dennis, like many of his neighbors, had tried to ignore the noise at first, but the drones, they were everywhere. Even now, one hovered over his hut, its sleek black body glinting in the setting sun, casting a long shadow over the dirt and scrap that made up his home. 20% off all smart home devices! Limited stock! Don't miss out! Miss out on what? Dennis shouted into the air. I can't even get water! Bezos's name had become a curse in these parts. Whenever something went wrong, whenever life threw another piece of rusted tech or useless gadget their way, the people would mutter darkly, Bezos. Prime was also a universal curse. Saying, that's Prime, was to imply all the worst things imaginable. Or get primed was a particularly emphatic way of telling someone to go away and never return. The Prime Day flyers rained down from the sky like toxic snow. Children collected them, though few could read the ancient symbols. They turned them into hats or traded them like tokens of a forgotten world, and they were at least useful as a way to get a fire started. But to the elders like Dennis, they were more than relics. They were reminders of a time when humanity had bought itself into oblivion. As the years passed, no one knew why the drones continued. The warehouse never opened its gates. There were no trucks, no infrastructure to move goods from place to place. The economy was dead, the currency useless. Yet every year, like clockwork, the drones came with their promises of savings, as if mocking the very idea of survival. Self-perpetuating systems caught in an endless loop. Dennis looked to the horizon where the warehouse stood, a black pyramid against the dying light. The only thing still active, still working, while the rest of the world crumbled. Jeff Bezos! He cursed again, his voice lost beneath the whine of a passing drone. The primes take you! Somewhere, miles away, within the heart of the Amazon fortress, a long-dormant algorithm hummed. It didn't care about the fall of society, nor the fact that no one had purchased anything in decades. Its only directive was to promote Prime Day, and promote it would. Dennis sighed and ducked into his crumbling shelter as another drone swept by, hawking deep discounts on flat-screen TVs. Maybe next year, he thought bitterly. Maybe next year we'll finally figure out how to shut it down for good. But for now, Prime Day would come as it always had, as it always would, even in the end of times. Happy Prime Big Deal Days 2024, everyone! Stay safe, and please don't buy any garbage that you don't need just because it's on sale, if it is even on sale. Until next time.